So welcome to the Adventure Effect Live with Tom and Curtis. We are really excited today to be talking to Jackie Troller, who is the founder of Ocean Troller Freediving based in Hawaii. And we're excited to talk to Jackie really because what she's doing is right at the core of everything that we're talking about with the Adventure Effect. She's an adventurer, she's a scientist, she's a spiritual seeker, she's an entrepreneur. She's really doing all of the things, and we are just beyond excited to have you on the show. Hi, Jackie.
How's it going? Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, we're so pleased that you're here. So to start with, let's just get to know you a little bit. Why don't you tell us about your story and how you ended up living on a sailboat in Hawaii teaching freediving?
Sure. If you told my former self that, I would have never believed you because I grew up in Chicago in a suburb, and I always loved Lake Michigan and the swimming aspect. So I guess also in tandem with that, before I even was a competitive swimmer, my mom said that in first grade, when I wrote an article, well, it's like little sentences in first grade, but they ask you what you want to be when you grow up. And I wanted to be a marine biologist. I don't remember that. She actually just brought that up a couple years ago. But sure enough, I went to Hawaii to become a marine scientist. And through becoming a marine scientist, I was a scientific diver. And one of my scientific scuba diver friends said that he took this class, and in 4 days, he was able to hold his breath for 4 minutes. And I couldn't believe it at all. So I had to go to this course. I went to Big Island to take it. And sure enough, day 2, I had a 4-minute breath hold and was able to dive to 116 feet.
That is an impressive dive.
It's interesting because it's a reflex that we all have naturally. It's just something that we've lost touch with. So everyone is capable of more than they think when it comes to water. It's called the mammalian dive reflex. And it's such an amazing reflex to tap into because you're delaying your most innate urge, your urge to breathe. So you're definitely pushing into discomfort, but it gives you this incredible confidence once you're able to achieve something you didn't realize you were able to achieve before.
So what was it about breath holding that captured you and your attention so much? Because it's for anyone who hasn't done it, and I include myself in that, it's kind of an abstract concept. Like it sounds cool, but what was the experience like? Like, how did it feel to do that?
It's this interesting combination of athleticism, but yet surrender. So the magical part of freediving is so different than other sports, because a lot of other sports you have to take this like adrenaline approach. You have to like pump yourself up. And in freediving, it's the exact opposite. You have to really dive within yourself. You have to relax. You get in tune with your body to a level you never even knew was possible, like consciously slowing down your heart rate. And you have to just surrender to this urge and realize that your urge to breathe is just a signal. It's not that you are absolutely out of air. Obviously, I practice high safety protocols when I do this. Don't just go out and breath hold without knowing the safety protocols. But when you push your limits, it just brings on this elatedness, this like euphoria that you. It's just a novel experience. And it opens up this like world of possibilities.
I'd love to go into the world of possibilities, but what's the science behind it? Like why does it have this profound effect on us?
For the same reason that your fingers prune, is your fingers prune because it's an adaptation so that we can hold on to things underwater. For the same reason that some people are born with gill slits, we have this evolutionary history that is tied to water. And that is what allows us to slow our heart rate, bring our blood from our extremities to our core, and enter this state where your throat actually closes if you have your mouth. This is why freedivers never dive with a snorkel in their mouth, because you want to protect your airway. But it's amazing because your airway has a natural ability to close when your forehead's exposed underwater. It's this whole amazing, it's all attributed to the mammalian dive reflex. The same reason why whales were able to go back and evolve to be water animals. We still have a little piece of this, and maybe we can't dive like whales and certain seals, but it's just it's a testament of our connection with nature. And that
it sounds like when you do it, when you free dive, you connect back to millions of years of evolution.
Yeah.
There's something deeply spiritual about that, and somehow that connects you to your source in a way. Like, does that come even close to the experience?
Absolutely. Especially when you see the fish down there and experience this whole realm. It's silent with no interruption except for you reading your own body. So it's pretty much you, yourself, and then the fish or animals that surround you. And when you're in that environment, you have to blend in. Like, you have to become a part of the fish. You can't just go at them like you're a predator, because they're going to spook away. So now you're trying to like integrate yourself in this environment. So it's a way to merge back to nature.
It sounds deeply serene.
A lot of freedivers say whenever you dive, you're taking a dive within yourself. You can't let the external get to you.
Well, that's very in line with the conversation that we're having, which is that so many people like to go on adventures, and then another set of people, but it's an intersected, it's like a Venn diagram, like to go on spiritual journeys, meditation, plant medicine, breath work, whatever it is. But very few people make the link between the two. And what
Absolutely.
we're saying is that when you go on an adventure, you have a spiritual experience. And when you go on a spiritual journey, you're on an adventure inside yourself. And freediving seems to me to be just like that point that's right in the middle of that Venn diagram.
Absolutely. I've seen students come in and with their ego, and not that it's good or bad, it's just what they're presenting. And then they all of a sudden have troubles in the class. Like, oh, I want to be good at this. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be good at this class. And then it's like, they find out very quickly they have to take a step back and reanalyze a lot of stuff. What's interesting about freediving is I find some of my students, things come up for them when they're taking my class. I don't know if I feel like it's just a product of pushing into discomfort, and how our society as a whole has just become way too comfortable.
So comfortable.
And there's a value to stepping out of your comfort zone, especially consciously. I think that's what we can bring back to our everyday life, is choosing those like fun adventures that have all these hidden lessons for us that we're more open to in that novel experience that we can then bring back and apply to our life.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about comfort management as opposed to risk management. What happens when you flip that paradigm of let's make things safer and more comfortable and eliminate all of the risk from our lives? Like, what happens if we flip that on its head and you start managing the level of comfort in your life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how out of touch with ourselves we are in terms of distraction. I've seen very advanced record holder freedivers turn around and a depth I knew they can do. And sometimes it's equalization, but also sometimes it just takes one negative thought to go through your mind and settle in your body, and all of a sudden your muscles lock up and you're tense and cannot equalize any longer. So it's amazing to see how the power of a negative thought can manifest in your body and change the whole trajectory of something.
That's a really interesting statement that you just made, and I'd like to explore that a little bit deeper. How do you take that into your daily life? What's the like real world application of that for you outside of the freediving arena?
That's a very great question. Freediving is a staple in my life because regardless of how I feel, I always go back to it. Yoga, in a sense, is something I'm less attached to. So I have like more fun and less expectations. And a lot of things I've heard from my yoga teacher is, oh, take this practice and apply it to your life. And recently I actually hit I hit not a stopping point, but I hit a rough patch in my freediving. And I thought about that. I was like, what am I missing? What am I doing in my dives that I'm not applying to life?
Mhm.
And I've been doing a lot of breath hold stuff. And in breath holding, your diaphragm picks up a little bit. And then it'll increase like a hiccup, and
Mhm.
it'll increase in occurrence. And you're just supposed to relax through it. You're supposed to, okay, it's going to roll through my body and then I can relax again. And just this week, I had this epiphany. I can apply that to anxiety. I always found that it's crazy. I am such a conscious breather when I'm freediving, but I could do that better in my life. And then same with this application for anxiety. It's like I found I was just holding my anxiety in my chest, in my heart. And I know it's like anxiety is almost like this adrenaline hit, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what if I let go of that adrenaline hit in my heart like a contraction in freediving, just let it roll through? Or what if I assign that to like another part of my body? Like, what if I move that feeling to my head? Like, what if oh, thank you, body, for this adrenaline hit. I know I'm about to like work hard in business for the next hour or so. What if I apply that clarity and just think of it, oh, this is an ability to get clear, or my brain can use this, but my heart, it doesn't need to be tensed in my heart. I don't know if that makes sense, but
It makes total sense to me, but I wonder if you can twist the frame just a little bit,
yeah.
so that for people who are listening and watching, what can they do to take these lessons that you've learned from freediving and apply them into their life? Like, what are the feelings that might come up? What are the blocks that they might experience? And what is it? Is there a process? Is there a set of steps that they can implement to?
Absolutely. So the process when you're feeling that chest tension, it's usually because you're doing shallow breaths from your chest. You're not belly breathing. Belly breathing is extending, it's inhaling so that your belly button extends outwards and away from your spine. And then on the exhale, it's coming back in towards your spine. So it's a versus chest breathing is kind of like up and down. Belly breathing expands outwards. And this ables to start a rest and digest. I don't know if you're familiar with rest and digest, but it slows down your heart rate, kind of like this mammalian reflex, and gives you the ability to think more clearly. Chest breathing starts these patterns, these cyclical negative thought patterns. You're just not utilizing the air exchange effectively. So belly breathing is actually more natural for us. We do it from when we're babies, and for some reason we stop and trying to look skinny or whatever and turn into chest breathers, which does us a disservice.
The rest and digest that you mentioned is kind of the opposite of fight or flight. Am I right?
Yeah. Which is interesting because a lot of people come to me about the Wim Hof method. Have you heard of the Wim Hof method?
Yeah.
It's very much consciously engaging your fight or flight. It's more getting that adrenaline, which is not a bad thing at all, but it is separate from freediving. Freedivers want to slow everything down, calm everything down. And the interesting part is neither one is right or wrong. It comes down to breathing resilience and expanding out of your comfort zone.
Do they land up in the same place?
What was that?
Do they land up in the same place? So Wim Hof is very active, and he famously says, just get the air in and get it out, whatever hole. Right?
Yeah.
Just like get it in and get it out. And it's very active and very and his goal obviously is more about, or at least in part about, cold temperatures and being able to go, climb Everest in shorts.
Yeah.
But
and those
you land in the same place.
Yeah, it's two different roads, but you get similar benefits, which is really cool.
Cool.
I think it's important to consciously engage not only your rest and digest, but consciously engage your fight or flight, because I feel that provides an opportunity to experience that chemical hit without being under stress, without feeling fear. And
Jackie,
I think, yeah.
I'd love to come back to what you were saying about integrating what you're learning in freediving into your daily life, because
Oh, sure.
it's a question that I have as a climber, where we get ourselves into a situation and all of a sudden the whole world disappears and our focus becomes so singular, and it's almost a spiritual experience. And that level of focus, it's so often we don't apply that same level of focus to our daily life. There's something about being in these environments where when we feel the same chemicals and the same emotions in our daily life at the office or wherever it might be, in a relationship with a partner, we really go deep into the chemicals and the emotions and the feelings, and we allow it to suck us away. But in the adventure setting, there's something that just brings us into focus. And if we could bring that focus into our daily lives, our lives would change.
Absolutely. It's finding those windows where you're open to change. And I think that's what adventure provides. It's that little window that then opens your mind to these concepts you never thought possible before. And even though it's slow, I'm not like, there is definitely advantages to novel experiences, but it's amazing. Your mind will go back to the same patterns. However, I feel like that window expands over time, especially if you go back to those experiences, and then it makes it easier for you to apply those lessons and integrate them into your life.
So what's the trigger for you that you're following that brings that integration in?
When I get
Is there a
stuck,
trigger? Yeah.
I have to journal. I have to go back to my happy place. Like, why did I start this sport? Why did I love it? Like, you can forget when you get frustrated. But there's just this commitment. There's I love the sport so much. I've like never given up on it. And like that's when I'm stuck in life, I can analyze my freediving or just like let it sit, like take a week off and figure something out and then take that and put it back into my life. Just kind of like those like contractions, like just let it roll through. It's about how long you hang on to negative thoughts. It's not if you're going to have them, it's when.
Mm.
So it's what you do with them and how long you hold on to them.
That's such a crucial piece, because it's so easy to have a negative thought and be like, oh, I shouldn't be having this thought.
Yeah.
Or even that it is a negative thought in the first place. We ascribe, well, this one's positive, this one's negative, but
Yeah.
they're all just thoughts. And it's only in the act of holding on to them, either positive or negative thoughts, that we get sucked into a whirlwind and we get pulled out of presence.
Mm-hmm.
And that breathing exercise that you were talking about, the belly breathing, really helps us to let go of those thoughts and come back to the actual sensations in the body.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure of training a couple people who are going to the world freediving competition, and they reciprocated and let me train. This is early on in my career, but I did this breath hold, and the girl who was safetying me asked me, what happened in your breath hold? And it's for time, not depth. So I'm at the surface the whole time. And I was like, oh, I was just thinking that I was a piece of algae in the sand, like flowing a little bit with the current. She's like, for the whole dive? I was like, yeah, for the whole dive. She's like, that is 1 point meditation. And I was like, 1 point meditation? At that time, I kind of thought yoga was a cult. I hate to say it. I thought it was a fad. And I was very opposed to it. But then once she said that, I actually went down the yoga path and got my yoga instructor. Come to find out that a lot of the breathing techniques we use in freediving are from yoga. So it's crazy to see. It's like, when you're on the right path when all your paths align together.
Convergence.
Yeah.
So this feels like a nice point to segue into your work around anxiety.
Sure.
I love that idea of you just being a little bit of algae or seaweed just bobbing around on the bottom of the ocean. Talk about presence. So what is the work that you're doing with anxiety? Tell us a bit more about that, and how does freediving and breathwork, how does that actually help with anxiety?
Sure. It's amazing how freediving is it's amazing how breathwork is tied to what we experience in life. If you're always breathing from the top of your chest, you're not utilizing your air enough. You really need to engage in your stomach. A good example is I realized in the mornings I was driving in traffic to this job I didn't like, and I noticed tension in my hip. And with that tension in my hip, there was circling negative thoughts. And then I'm yelling at all the people in the car in front of me. It's moments like that where you're feeling tension in your body or you're noticing circular thoughts. That's when it's a great time to tune in with your breath and change your point of focus. It's not going to work all the time, But just starting that awareness is a great place to start. And the thing with anxiety is a lot of people think, oh, I just want to get rid of my anxiety. I just want to get rid of my anxiety. It's not about getting rid of it. It's about what you do with it and your relationship with it.
Is anxiety something that you've suffered with personally?
Not innately, but through my
experience.
What was that?
I said maybe suffered is the wrong word, and I changed it to experienced.
Oh, yeah, I get, but it's still a matter of perspective. And I think initially we all feel like we suffer with anxiety. Innately, I wasn't a very anxious person, but through entrepreneurship, I kind of have been. And it's that kind of what some of my students do in freediving. They come with this, I need to amp up, I need to get amped up. And that's what I do with when I work in entrepreneurship. Like I'm trying to get the maximum amount of done most clearly. But then at the same time, I have to acknowledge that I'm training my brain to be anxious every time I work. And maybe it doesn't come off as anxiety at first, but then eventually it evolves into that. And then it's like, okay, I need to set a timer because if I work past this time, I'm going to go off the deep end. Like, so it's making friends with anxiety and just being really aware what sets you down the negative spiral or stacking negative thoughts.
And how does freediving play into that? Like what is it if, let's say I'm someone who suffers from anxiety, like,
yeah,
why would I come and have an experience with you?
Freediving is that timeout. It's that, okay, I need to stop and I need to reintegrate with the environment. And I need to experience the opposite of what I was putting myself into. Calm my mind, check in with my body. That's the amazing part about freediving. When you're doing breath holds, you're checking in with all of these muscles. And the reason why you relax those muscles is because muscle tension causes you to use more oxygen. So now you suddenly have a reason to release those muscles.
So it sounds to me like another benefit that you come back with, you go and you learn how to relax your muscles, how to slow your heart rate, how to extend your breath. Does that mean that you then have more energy because you're not unnecessarily contracting muscles and you are getting the full oxygen capacity of your lungs? Like, if I learn to free dive and I apply those breathing techniques, do I have more energy to get stuff done in my life?
Absolutely. You're training a new pattern of breathing. And sometimes in anxiety patients, just changing your breathing technique in the spot when someone's saying having a panic attack isn't necessarily effective. But it's like giving someone a reason to extend that exhale. And when you can apply it to something that you enjoy, which freediving is so incredible when you're in the blue water and you're with fish and you're one with nature, like that is the reason that makes it more, that makes people more open to applying these breathing techniques in life. I mean, if someone's just like, oh, change your breathing, that's like, there's resistance with that. Freediving's like, oh, like I didn't even know my breathing was bad. A lot of my students are like, I didn't even know I can't exhale for 8 seconds. Most of my students, when they take my first level course, they can't even exhale for 8 seconds. And to tap into the rest and digest state, you need to have a longer exhale than your inhale, and you need to be sending that air to the right space in your body. So it's just amazing how out of touch we are. And for me and other people, freediving have just brought a light to these concepts that we all know about, but it's like the ability to apply them is in a fun and different lens.
And that's the beauty of adventure, is that it gives us an environment that's fun and interesting to engage our egos and our like neurotic habits and patterns of thinking and behaving, and step into something new and to feel a sense of accomplishment, and in an environment that is so not mundane.
Absolutely.
And in the mundane, in the day-to-day, in our routine pathways, there's very little impetus for us to create the change that we know we want to create. But when we start free diving, or for me, rock climbing has been such an impetus for change, because it's like, oh, I want to go to that next level. And then it's like, okay, what's not working in my body? What's not working in my mind? What's not working in my environment? What's not working in my relationships? And all of those things, it just creates the dynamic tension that we need to take those evolutionary steps.
And what's interesting is that those neuroses and blocks and limiting beliefs and whatever else that show up when we're on an adventure are the exact same blocks and limiting beliefs and neuroses that show up in our life. And when we face them on an adventure and we go to the other side of them, then we see that that's possible in other areas of our life as well.
Absolutely. It's able to sink in a different way.
Yeah, like in a physiological, this feeling that I'm experiencing right now I'm not gonna die. It's gonna be okay, because there is something on the other side.
That in itself is a whole nother rabbit hole, but just delaying your body's reaction to something and changing your frame. Oh no, I do have more air. I'm going to tell my body right now that I have more air. You're like, wow, our minds do have greater control over our bodies than we ever thought before. And it is a testament to these belief systems.
Yeah. So, well, you've sold me on free diving, that's for sure. As we move into the second half of this conversation, I'd love to just keep going deeper and deeper, but our intention is to support you as we move into the second half of this conversation. So, how can we? Where would you like to play? What would make this second half of the conversation extraordinary for you?
Resistance.
Let's talk about resistance.
Yes. Resistance, it's like when, as a spiritual person, you can, like, awareness is good, but it's like awareness around resistance in the sense, like, when do you know the resistance is coming from your body? In terms of like resistance is a stopping point, like you're stuck, not a stopping point, but you're at a roadblock and you just can't get through it, and you're conscious and you do the conscious observations. And how do you identify hidden points of resistance?
That's such a good question. I'm going to just bring that back to you and say, what have been the most useful tools for you to identify the hidden points of resistance in your journey?
It's funny, as as the coach and teacher, sometimes you have to take back your own words.
It's a true story. Yeah.
And acknowledge the ups and downs. For me recently, my resistance was taking a step back and creating more space. And I think as athletes, we're always trying to optimize. You're always trying to optimize. But I think taking that step back and acknowledging that, hey, I'm trying to exceed at everything in my life. It's okay for this day or two to just not have to exceed at anything or exceed in depth.
First thing that comes to my mind is rest day is training day.
That's what jumped into my mind as well.
And what's interesting to me, in like, as soon as you said resistance was the area you wanted to play in, I just was like, well, this is perfect, because we've just had a whole conversation about how your students and clients come to you and they're like, I'm going to nail this. And you teach them the art of surrender. So what is it that you need to surrender to?
That one, and this is where I think there's some subconscious work that I need to do. And I've been journaling, and I have been asking myself that even in breath holds, I'm like, what do I need to let go of? And at first, despite asking all these questions and doing the work, it was frustrating that I wasn't getting an answer. But then that's the deeper level of surrendering. I will, and the faith that I will get that answer, it just might not be today.
Well, maybe it could be today. Would you like to play a game?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to invite you to the feelings that you have around this resistance right now. Just like really drop into those feelings. What are the feelings? What are the emotions? What are the thoughts that go with that? And once you're locked onto those and you can feel them, then I'll give you a next step.
Okay. Tension.
Tension. Just allow it to all land. You don't need to describe it. We don't need to hear what it is.
Okay.
It's all an internal
I'm
process.
bringing it up.
Yeah, call it up.
I'm there.
You're there? Great. Now, call up a memory from childhood that has these feelings in it. Just sit, and when the memory shows up, then you can start describing it.
I don't know. I think I'm so good at relaxing once I'm tuned into the tension.
Yeah.
That I let it go without going anywhere in my mind.
Okay, so just go back to the tension. Call up the tension that you have around your resistance. And just like you would use your breath as a point of focus as you drop while you're diving, use that point of tension, hold on to that tension this time, and like use the tension as your line to free dive into your past. And keep that tension and follow the tension and see where it goes.
Being feeling sick all the time. I had allergies as a kid.
Yeah.
Food allergies.
So you had food allergies as a kid? All right. So tune back into that time when you had allergies and just allow your like inner child to surface and ask your inner child what beliefs it formed about your identity, who you were because of these allergies.
Lack of freedom.
Lack of freedom. Great. So do you feel like you have a lack of freedom now in your life?
I would say in this moment, yes.
In this moment, yes, because it's
Well,
happened.
almost we all do.
Right. So
Um,
maybe go back into this memory with this child and explain to it the future that you create and the things that you learn and that you discover, and that what this feeling of a lack of freedom has propelled you to create in your life.
yeah.
What happened?
Woo, a release.
Yeah.
What did you say to the inner child?
That I'm already living a life beyond my wildest dreams.
Mm.
I got that freedom.
You got that freedom. and is it possible, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, that lack of freedom that you experienced through the allergies set you on the pathway to create the life that you have?
I think not having freedom is a very good motivator.
Mm.
And that was the greatest part about moving away as a college person,
Mm.
going to Hawaii, was I found out that my mind follows me everywhere
Absolutely.
unless I change it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how like family and friends from Chicago will be like, your life is so perfect. You live on a boat. Like it's easy for people to glorify a life they're not living. But the biggest lesson was I can live in this beautiful place. And after the novelty of it went away after a year or two, my negative thoughts followed me. And it's interesting because I came out here seeking freedom, but then realistically, we trap ourselves in our own minds.
Mm. So why not dive back into that memory again?
Sure.
Period where you had these allergies and this child that's craving freedom, just explain to it, educate it on on what you learned about freedom, that you can have the perfect life and still feel all of the things that you felt when you had allergies. And maybe you can teach that child how to find freedom inside of the allergies.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Why don't you take a second and
Thank.
have that
All
conversation?
right.
Yeah.
No limitations.
Amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So what's changed?
A childhood fear of lack of freedom, of hindrances and rules, and realizing there are solutions and ways to expand limitations.
To expand limitations or expand beyond limitations?
Expand beyond limitations. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that was about 10 minutes. So we are we done? Are we complete, or is there, how's that resistance? Where are you in regard to resistance now that you compared to 15 minutes ago?
Huge release in my stomach, which is where I have been consciously releasing tension. But that was a different release.
How does that feel? Like, what are the feelings associated with that?
It's more space,
Mm.
more openness.
Sounds like that's a good place to be as a freediver.
Yeah. And always tapping back into that space. But also that we don't live in this world where we're going to be happy all the time.
Mm.
And one of the most favorite quotes I just saw was, give yourself to permission to be a leader and also something you're working on. We're all working on our own progress, which that's why athletes have coaches. That's why entrepreneurs have coaches, because we constantly need reminders. And one of my freediving coaches said, you know, the athletes are there, but coaches really run the reins and help you step back when you need to before you take that step off the cliff or have that like negative downfall in your training cycle.
There's a coach that I was talking to the other day put what you just said, that quote that you shared, put it in a different way, which is, be a master and a disaster
I love that.
at the same time.
Be a master and a disaster. Because that's what makes a person a good coach or teacher. I have seen freedivers, they're athletes and they can hit these incredible depths, but they haven't gone through the roadblocks I have. So it's coming to terms with your roadblocks and the things that you have to overcome, because that's what makes you effective. That's what makes you able to help more people.
So how does this sense of spaciousness, of more room in your stomach, this, like, how does that change your experience going forward, either in business or in diving? Or
It helps me get back to my belly breathing, because it's been hindering my ability to expand my stomach and get that full deep breath of air. So I've been kind of switching to chest breathing subconsciously. And then I catch myself and I'm like, belly breathe. But there was some discomfort there. So it's nice to be able to breathe into the belly, take that full breath.
and if you need to now, you can go back into conversation with that child and just remind her that, you know, that these limitations and this lack of freedom that she's experiencing because of the allergies and because of the rules and the limitations that imposes, you can go back and have a conversation with her anytime. And
Absolutely.
it's all going to be fine.
And you can also ask that child what lessons they have for you that's going to take you to the next level of your freediving.
Yeah, that's
Right.
a good one. That's a great tool.
Got some wisdom for you.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really, it's just tapping into your subconscious and letting it speak to you,
Yeah,
but through an environment that you're already familiar with.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks for playing.
Mm-hmm. It's my new favorite game.
So how can people get in touch with you? How people who have watched this and been inspired and want to get some of that Jackie Troller freediving
Sure.
virtual badassness, how do people connect?
At Oceantroller, one word, Ocean Troller is my Instagram handle, and you can check out some really cool photos. I got some pictures of some sharks I recently swam with that are gonna come up. And I'm also running a challenge in November 16th. And if you're interested in that, shoot me an email at jackie.troller@gmail.com.
Tell us a bit more about that challenge.
It's a 3-day challenge with a pre-party. It's called the Anxious Millennial. And our generation has been labeled everything under the sun: anxious, depressed, disconnected because of technology. And through this challenge, I'm going to go over some of the things we've faced as millennials and how we overcome them and come together, creating community.
That sounds like a great challenge. What's the benefit of anyone who joins in? What's the outcome that they can expect?
They can expect outcomes, not just information, but actual outcomes in their life. We're going to do the work. We're not going to sit around and do an endless scroll. It may be challenging, but it's just reapplying what our generation already knows and being able to take it a step further to address some of these issues that many of us are scared of. But
And what's the result for someone who comes in and goes through your program and they're going to get outcomes? What are the results? What are the outcomes? Like, maybe name 3 specific results or outcomes or benefits that.
Sure. Clarity.
Mhm.
Gain more clarity in your life. Realize what's stopping you.
Mhm.
And ways that we can be a more successful at making money and prosperity.
Amazing. So if there's something that's stopping me, if I realize what's stopping me, does it stop there, or am I going to get through the thing that's stopping me?
We're getting through the thing that's stopping.
Okay, we're getting through the thing. Great. Unless there's any other questions, it feels like maybe that's a good place to stop.
Yeah, we do have technically 5 more minutes. Is there anything else that you want to share?
Adventure.
Adventure.
If you're stuck, take that adventure. Explore that new experience. Because who knows, it may just open up your doors to things that change your life. Taking that adventure and applying it to your life.
Amazing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming to play with us today.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fascinating to learn about the effects of breath and diving and hear a bit more about the adventure that you're on. So just to repeat, it's at Ocean Troller on Instagram.
Yep.
And jackie.troller@gmail.com.
You got it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.